I had a conversation with Kobe Bryant for about 30 minutes one day, and it changed everything. That was he told me something just to sum things up. Again, it was about 25, 30-minute conversation, but he told me something during the conversation that was kind of scary, but I didn't even understand it at the moment. But he said you got to be willing to see black. Because I told him things that I wanted to do. In basketball. I was 16 years old when this conversation actually happened, so it wasn't. I wasn't an adult at the time, but he saw something in me. At the time we were kind of like eye to eye. I was about 6'5" at the time. He's 6'6", and he's just he's talking to me. He found out we played for the same AAU team, and it's just me and him and my father talking right there, and give me all these tips. And I heard the whole Mamba mentality straight from his mouth, man. It was just like nuts to see. This is before the whole Mamba thing even came about for him. Nobody even heard that term with him yet. But he told me you got to be willing to see black, and I get it. I began applying that mentality to where like I'm willing to tap out. I'm willing to go that hard toward doing something, an objective, a craft, to where I know without a doubt, nobody can tell me I didn't get the best out of myself. And that mentality, man, it's taken me to some amazing places. It's allowed me to meet some amazing people, be in some amazing venues, just because I'm willing and daring, to be honest with you, to see black.
Hey, what's going on? This is Unlatched Mind, episode 55. My guest today is Joel Green. Joel is CEO of Pro Level Training, the national director of Nike Sports Camp, a former professional basketball player, renowned motivational speaker. He's done TED Talks. He's got a BA in psychology. He's just an overall thought leader in this sort of motivational category, if you will. All those accolades are awesome, right? All those achievements are amazing. But my favorite part about Joel is just his story. His come from behind story. We talk about his childhood and the struggles that he and his family went through, and in my opinion, that makes everything that he's accomplished so much more impressive than sort of the average person that is quote unquote successful. So, love talking to Joel. He's just a true winner in every way, and very motivating, very very inspiring to talk to. So, I loved having him on, and we just need more people like this. So. I was very excited to get him on and to share his story. So it'll no doubt inspire many. So with that, let's jump in. I give you Joel Green. So Joel Green, thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it. You got an. I love your kind of. I love your backstory. Obviously, we're going to talk about your book, right? The title is "Filtering: The Way to Extract Strength from Struggle." I don't know. I don't know you very well, but a little bit of research I've done from you. You came from some crap. And you used it. The title of your book just says it all, right? Extract strength from struggle. And I think the most interesting people that I know came from some real tough times, and there's something common there. So, anyway, we'll get into kind of some of the details there, but maybe a little bio on yourself. Give me a little background on who you are.
Well, Philadelphia native, and so I've been there my entire life. Over in New Jersey now, but just came up. As you mentioned, came from some crap, man. Grew up pretty impoverished. I didn't always recognize it as a child, as most children may not always be fully aware of things. That childlike ignorance, of course, which is a blissful place to be for a kid. Yeah. But I knew things were tough. We grew up in an abandoned house. I knew things were a little run down. We had holes in our staircase, and we wore donated clothes, that our parents would bring in by the hefty trash bags and stuff like that. It wasn't all of our clothes. We were able to get some new clothes too sometimes, but that was the state of things. It was violence in the neighborhood. It's during the crack era, the late 80s, early 90s, and I would see the little crack vials on the street as I'm walking around age of 5. It's like, okay, I'm picking these up, not even knowing what they are at first. Like, oh, what's this colorful thing? It has a colorful cap on it. Just, and then I started to learn, oh, there's the drugs. Like, okay, this is. I started to hear from the DARE programs at the time. Don't do drugs. That's what they look like. Don't touch these, stuff like that. But to be in that environment was crazy at times, man. It was just, it was humbling. It was scary. It was life though. I was 10 feet away from a shooting when I was 6 years old. and I was the only person there outside of the kid that got shot. And just having to escape things like that, afraid that I was going to be shot, it could be traumatizing, And I had a knife pulled out on me at 9 years old, and it's just unnecessary stuff, But all of those things groomed me to, grow into who I am today. I lost one of my older brothers traumatically as a teenager, and I just got a callous towards difficulty, man, to where I said, okay, I can't just keep going through this stuff and not get something from them, right? That was the whole revelation for me. I got to get something from this. I got to go through it anyway. And I'm not one that, I don't enjoy complaining about stuff. That's just not me. I'm human. I cry like the next person. I feel sad like the next person. But me having the vehicle of basketball that I had, as I was an active player, I'm like, I know I can use this. And I learned how to actually, again, break down my moments and extract some type of fuel from them. And I began doing that with everything. I'm talking about every single thing in life. I'm like, if it's unideal, I'm going to lean into it as opposed to run from it. And I'm going to take something that's actually going to propel me to the other side of this thing.
How old were you think when you started sort of, digesting this crap coming at you and turning it into gold in a sense, right? I mean, how do you remember how old you were, or generally, were you young or?
I was pretty young. Yeah, I was pretty young. It came by me not looking to pull something from it, but it came initially by distraction. I would distract myself on purpose often to escape my reality.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I would just draw. I love art, and I would create and just build things. I wanted to be an architect when I was growing up. I would just build these model homes of these houses I would see on TV. And, it was these paid programs would come on late at night, and I would just stay up and watch them and make a sunroom because we didn't have a sunroom. I would just make these things that they were selling on these paid programs. And it was, I found a way just to have outlets, as an escape. And it added to my creativity. It added to my, artistic abilities. And that was a great thing for me. And I began playing basketball at the age of 9, organized. I played since I was about 3, but organized ball at 9. And that was the most beautiful escape I could have ever asked for. And that's when I really began saying, okay, I'm angry about where I'm coming from. I'm going to take it out on you guys. This line of across.
Yeah. I mean, healthy ways. A lot of other folks in your neighborhood, I'm sure, took it a different way.
A different way, And I'll be honest, I won't act like I didn't. That I was a part of that crowd as a kid, before the age of 7, getting in fights. I fought every day with my brothers. I'm the youngest of 4, 2 older brothers, 1 older sister. So you can imagine how I got teased growing up. You know what I mean? Just in the house, like healthy brotherhood way. It wasn't anything detrimental. But I would fight them every day. So I would be faced with another kid who's also 6 years old or 7 years old, and I'm like, you come at me this way, I'm going to go back at you aggressively because I'm used to watching WWF or WWE now. But I'm doing this stuff every day, and it just I became a product of that environment, and I had to change. That wasn't healthy, and so again, basketball became the outlet of aggression for me, to where I had to be good in school, I had to be good at home in order to stay on the court. So it was a great trade-off.
Yeah. Now, mom and dad, were they both present? How was that? How did they help shape your sort of life? I mean, they obviously were in a rough spot with you in the same house, I assume. But were they both present physically
both
and
present,
mentally?
Fortunately, both pastors as well. So it
really.
was a whole lot of faith.
I was going to ask you both. I see God and biblical truths all throughout a lot of your sentiments. If I, and I was going to ask you about that, and that's. You can't. There's no way that's a coincidence.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence at all, man. It was intentionally instilled in me, man. It was just a whole lot of you can. I mean, I would hear that before Obama was elected, and that became the whole thing. You can. It was funny. I was like, oh, I know that saying. That's all I would hear growing up. And I got in trouble put on punishment for saying I can't when I was 8 years old. And
I read that. You had dinner. You had to miss dinner or something.
I kind of missed dinner. I remember smelling the dinner because I had to sit at the table while everybody else ate. So yeah, my parents went and got fast food one night, which was a rare occasion, and it was a treat whenever that
It was a
happened in the
treat,
house.
yeah.
And I had to sit and watch my brothers and sisters eat their food, and while my brothers chuckled while they ate and looked at me, tearing up over there as a little 8-year-old. But I never said the combination of those two words, "I can't," in relation to anything ever again, as far as my ability. So,
Wow. Well, good
that
for your
was
parents. That's hard to do. I mean, when you're, that's
yeah,
hard. That's hard at the time, right? But it was obviously that's a little stepping stone for you that helped shape you,
big
man.
time.
That was hard. I mean, gosh, that's crazy. Just for saying the word "I can't." I
Just
love
for
it.
saying the word, it was just like, whoa, okay, yeah, y'all are serious about this stuff. Like
You're not messing around.
it's not just word. They understood the fact that words leads to action or
Mm-hmm.
inaction. So it's like, okay, I teach my son the same thing now. He's known since the age of 3. You better not say those words. Like
Yeah.
don't. I've heard him tell his friends, "Don't say that." And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So
Absolutely.
it's they had a huge impact on me growing up as far as
Yeah.
giving me a vision. To be honest with you, man, that was the best
Mm.
thing. They gave me vision beyond where we were.
Yeah. No, I mean, especially now, I love that. Especially now, where I grew up kind of the same way. I mean, in fact, there's a lot of parallels in our upbringing, right? I mean, we won't get into the race thing, the white, black, but because I know there's unique struggles,
Yeah,
for you and for me too. I mean, I had a Vietnam vet dad who, there's all sorts of struggles we all have,
yeah,
but I love pulling the positives out of the struggles that
exactly.
that folks see, and you absolutely exemplify that. And but especially now, I love the don't say I can't thing, because right now I feel like we're getting into an excuse culture where there's so
Yeah,
much excuse. And someone like you, I must think you sit back and say, guys, people, come on, just
right.
come on. I know we all don't start at the same starting block. We
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't. Anyone who thinks we all do is just, then they're living in a fantasy world. But
Yeah,
you can make you can shape your destiny. I mean,
exactly.
you know what I mean? So what do you say to folks like that are saying, well, I'm not, I wasn't brought into privilege, and I wasn't born into, my parents never had money, et cetera, et cetera. There's unlimited excuses.
Right.
And going back to the do not say I can't, motto, like, what would you say to folks like that?
You have to hold yourself accountable for your future. I mean, you can't blame shift. You can only to a certain extent blame shift your past, right? You're born into. You can't control where you're born into. You just can't
Right.
control that. But the moment you know and you're aware that you have power by your hands, you got to hold yourself accountable for where you're now going. Period. And you have to get out of that excuse mentality to where if you're going to talk about anything that went wrong or that's going wrong, and you're not including yourself in your reason, you're likely making an excuse. You're very likely making an excuse, as opposed to that being a completely valid reason that you're coming up with. And that's the thing to where I'm big on helping people to hold themselves accountable. I will say things that strikes people in the heart to help them to feel the conviction that they need for change, and that's really what it comes down to. Like, all these excuses again. You said it, man. That's the culture. I hear it on a daily basis, and it's like, man, they don't get it. They don't know their
Yeah.
own power. They have the
Yeah.
ability to change literally what they're complaining about, but they're using
Yeah.
their time to complain as opposed to time to change.
Yeah.
And that's literally what it's about. And for those that tends to make excuses, the way to get out of that is to learn about whatever you're making excuses about. Dive into learning about whatever went wrong. That's like this huge thing and a huge way to dig yourself out of that hole of excuses. Learn about whatever you're complaining about or whatever you're making excuses about. And that right there will help you to make the adjustments needed to correct that incorrect thing.
Yeah. You're, and I said this over email, but your 4-minute little teaser on your website about the book, man, it gave me goosebumps. I mean, because it really, and I'll put the link in the show notes. Everyone's going to see that, and it just, it really just kind of, it's a cartoon about your like you coming up and what you all your experiences, how you shape them late night, right in the book, and it's just, I don't know, man. It just, it resonated with me as well. I had similar experience growing up. I didn't write a book, but I saw some shit
Yeah.
that kids should never see, and it's like, I remember just like, you know, cops would kick the door in, dad, mom, just domestic, crazy domestic shit that kids should not see, and then have to
Crazy.
wake up like 3 hours later and drive an hour to school, take a calculus exam, barely pass it, and
Right.
just do that for years after year after year. I'm like, and I never knew. I don't even know how the hell I did it or
Yeah.
why I even did it.
Right.
Just I knew. I think it was. I think for me it was sort of like, I want to get out of this shit.
Yeah.
I got to get out of this, So I kind of see that as a blessing in a sense. I had parents were struggling with a bunch of different things. They were doing the best they can, but I knew I needed to just kind of change some stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to follow and just be the next generation sitting there in the same spot with the same issues and just downloading all that crap onto the next generation. If I have kids, prune that family tree sort of thing. So I saw your little video. And I wasn't even kidding. I had goosebumps a mile high. I was like, I was pumped. You know what I mean?
I appreciate
I love it.
that, man.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. Now your son is going. You have one son?
One son, yep.
Yeah. Now just think about where he's going to be, right? I mean, you know what I mean? It's just I just got excited for your story. I really did.
Thank you.
So summarize the book overall. Like what would you say is like kind of the executive summary of your book? And it's out now, right? It's already been released.
It's out now. Yep, it's out, available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. And
cool.
I mean, the book, again, it's called Filtering: The Way to Extract Strength from the Struggle, and that's really what it's all about. It's about finding an extraction point and tool when it comes to all that you go through. And obviously there's much of the difficult moments of life that I pinpoint in the book, but you can apply filtering to the good moments as well. I've been fortunate in playing basketball. I've gotten a number of wins, a lot of victories. I've won multiple national championships, and I filter those moments, you know what I mean? To where it's like, okay, well, how do we actually do that? Like a lot of people, when a high happens, a great thing happens, we're such on a high, we don't lean into that high enough to say, how did I actually pull this off?
Yeah.
And when you really lean into it, you're able to replicate those moments more and more and more. You have to extract some things from it to even avoid yourself from becoming complacent. And that's a big thing that I'm huge on coaching other people, these peak performers out here. I say, look, it happened. Guess what? It's over. And that's what I have to coach people on all the time. Like, okay, it happens. Enjoy it for that moment, but don't live it out too much. It's over. You got to focus on getting that
back
thing
to the
again.
grind.
Get back to the grind. Let everybody else celebrate it. Let everybody else celebrate you while they celebrate. But it's over. You have to say, okay, what can I take from this thing to recreate this and replicate it over and over and over again? So again, when it comes to filtering, it's not just for the bad moments. You can do that with the good, but for the bad moments, which we tend to focus on just as humans, because those are the things that really kind of smacks us in the face suddenly. That's when you have to lean into those dark moments. A lot of us, and I've told this before to a lot of people, even from the stage, like, look, the high achievers, these ultra successful people, they're not afraid of the dark. Right? They lean into the darkness. They go toward the dark moments to pull something, some drive, some motivation from those dark moments. You just alluded to the same thing, as far as you didn't want to spew that over to the next generation, that darkness. And so you use that as a driving force to get you away from it that much further. And that's where, high achievers do, to where it's like, okay, if you want to be successful, embrace those dark moments. Don't act like it didn't happen. Talk about them. Lean into those things and say, okay, I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen to me, what happened in my past and things like that. And filtering is what's going to help people really do that. You break down your situations, you get into a great emotional brainstorming phase. And when you do that, you actually remove the emotion from that difficult moment. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? You start saying, well, I wonder why this is happening to me. Same exact question, but void of the emotion, because that emotion usually clouds your judgment in that moment. So you have to move that emotion to really see things clearly. And that's what the filtering process does for people, and it helps them to make great adjustments.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because I think you have a psychology degree, don't you?
Yes.
I believe. So, yeah. I was thinking I'm very interested in psychology. In fact, that's kind of what this. I love. I have no formal education, but I think it's one of the psychology sort of tenets of like, you are not your thoughts.
Exactly.
Right. If you could sort of like separate that, yourself from your thoughts, it's almost like a meditation sort of thing. But it really does, when you're feeling something, realize that's not that's you experiencing something, and you can almost be, step outside yourself, be meta,
Exactly.
if you will, and be like,
Exactly.
hey, why am I feeling that? As opposed to you're caught in the feeling. You know what I mean? It
Right.
sounds like you just articulated that.
You have to. That's exactly what I'm going for. I mean, you
Yeah,
have to remove yourself from exactly where you are to then honestly step aside to view things objectively. Because when we're emotional, it's all subjective. We're narrow minded. We're not
yeah,
open. And when you remove emotion, you become a therapist in that moment for yourself.
for
Because
yourself.
now,
Yeah,
when you see a therapist and you're talking to a therapist, you're the emotional one. They're sitting there so calm,
right.
hardly even talking, maybe nodding their head, writing something down. You, they're emotionless. The therapist is. They're able to receive what's happening, what they're hearing, and when you can do that for yourself.
Yeah,
Now, having therapy, that's still a great thing. Outlets and venting, that's important. That's key. But in moments when you're going through something, you don't have the luxury of having a therapist right there 24/7.
right, right.
So,
Yeah,
for me, I had to develop this tool for myself to say, okay, when I go through something, what can I do that can actually help me get through this with a sound mind and not have to wait on hindsight to reveal things to me? I'd much rather be in the moment, be aware of what's taking place so I can develop foresight if this thing tries to come back around. So that's what I had to do when it came down to filtering my moments and really breaking them down and removing my emotions, which wasn't always easy to do. But the moment I started to see how beneficial it was, I said, I got to keep doing this because I'm able to get through these things without complaining, without even crying about some things that I normally would have before. I was able to get through and actually succeed on the other side.
yeah. I drew a little like I'm a very visual person.
Okay.
Some people, so I'm doing things like what shapes people like you, and I got a bunch of little circles with like an arrow going up top. I'm like
Yeah.
I got hardship, I got physical tests like basketball because you
Hmm.
talked about embracing fatigue and you had
Yeah.
another really cool. I wanted to ask you about. I have faith,
Yeah.
and so if you were to draw that out, obviously mine's probably 3% right, but like what do you think? What are the building blocks that created Joel? Right, obviously the hardship thing we talked about, basketball as well. You played professional ball.
Yeah. Played pro for a little bit. Yeah. For
Wh-
about
wh-
about 5 seasons. Yeah.
really? With who?
So I played all over the world, man. I trained with the Sixers for a couple months. I played over in Spain professionally, Ireland,
Oh,
Venezuela,
sweet.
down in South America. Had an NBA Development League contract back in
Hmm.
2010. Just made my rounds, man, around the world, and just was able to meet some amazing people in the process. Play with some amazing players. Some notable
Hmm.
guys throughout my journey. Allen Iverson and just a number of other, highly touted NBA players.
Yeah, man. Sweet.
It was amazing, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're all grinders, right? I mean, everyone think they're naturally blessed with their talent, but
Absolutely.
I mean, you hear the stories about Kobe. I mean, these guys are insane. They're insane. Their work ethic is just disgusting. I mean,
It's
so
nuts, man. Like I have to bring this. So I had a conversation with Kobe Bryant for about 30 minutes one day, and
mm,
it changed everything. That was he told me something just to sum things up. Again, it was about 25, 30-minute conversation, but he told me something during the conversation that was kind of scary, but I didn't even understand it at the moment. But he said you got to be willing to see black. 'Cause I told him things that I wanted to do. In
yeah,
basketball. I was 16 years old when this conversation actually happened, so it wasn't. I wasn't an adult at the
mm,
time, but he saw something in me. At the time we were kind of like eye to eye. I was about 6'5" at the time. He's 6'6", and he's just he's talking to me. He found out we played for the same AAU team, and it's just me and him and my father talking right there, and give me all these tips. And I heard the whole Mamba mentality straight from his mouth, man. It was just like nuts to see. This is before the whole Mamba thing even came about for him.
yeah, yeah.
Nobody even heard that term with him yet. But he told me you got to be willing to see black, and I get it. I began applying that mentality to where like I'm willing to tap out. I'm willing to go that hard toward
Mm,
doing something, an objective, a craft, to where I know without a doubt nobody can tell me I didn't get the best out of myself.
mm,
And that mentality, man, it's taken me to some amazing places. It's allowed me to meet some amazing people, be in some amazing venues, just because I'm willing and daring, to be honest with you, to see black.
yeah. Man, that's a bucket list type thing. 30 minutes with Kobe. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it
amazing.
was amazing, man. It was again life changing, mind changing. It changed a whole
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, and you hear people getting back to the excuses thing. You hear a lot of folks, oh, it must be nice when they look at someone that's successful, and
Right,
almost never. Yeah, there's some trust fund babies that just have whatever, but
right,
very rarely are those people even admired. They
right,
have a giant yacht and they don't do anything because he just
right,
inherited it. But most of the people we all admire sleep 3 hours. Like they're such hustlers.
right, right.
It's like, and that's behind the scenes. Like when you were writing your book, was anyone there sitting you clapping? No.
No,
It's 3 a.m, man. No one
right,
gives a
exactly,
shit. They don't give a
exactly.
shit. But now you publish your books. Oh, must be nice. What?
I've gotten that.
Like,
I've gotten that.
you know what I
Look,
mean?
man, it's amazing. I've gotten that on social media. They may see an article or something come up, and I may post it. And I
Yeah.
remember, someone recently was like, "Oh, must be easy, for a professional basketball player to do X, Y, Z, and this and that." I'm like, you don't know anything about my story, you know.
Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly.
But
Yeah.
it's unfortunate when people don't understand that there's another side to success. There's a whole lot of failure before that point. There's so much failure before that point.
Oh yeah, I mean
And
that iceberg picture,
right, right,
it's so true, man. That success part
exactly,
you see is the little tip. All the other shit you ain't seeing.
exactly,
You're not, you're not.
exactly.
And successful people don't care. They're like, all right, well, I don't care. I'm gonna do what it
Right,
takes, and most of it's invisible, and most
yeah,
of it's between me and me,
yeah,
and most of it's when you're sleeping,
yeah,
and that's it. I love that
exactly.
part of it. It's just like, and it comes with him, and I feel like a lot of successful people are well, I don't know what the ratio is, but the humility, I'm getting that from you as well, right? And maybe that touches on your faith a little bit, but I don't know, man. It's just there seems to be true success. It doesn't seem like rocket science. It's not easy, but it's there's
The
losing
formula
weight,
is simple,
whatever.
I think.
Right. There's some easy formulas. I mean, simple formulas, but not easy to execute on.
Right. That's it in a nutshell. I mean, it's like it
Yeah.
takes practice. It takes again willingness and again willpower has a whole lot to do with it. Daringness is definitely in the equation as well. There's a whole lot of ingredients. It's some ingredients. It's not complicated though, and that's my objective is to simplify the routes to success for people. To
Mm.
simplify how to have a vision for yourself. To simplify how to resolve your problems so that they don't revolve and keep coming back around again and again and again. It's not complicated.
Mm.
It just really takes you shifting your perspective and seeing
Yeah.
things a different way. And the moment you begin seeing them a different way, now walk in that way. Try it a moment or two. The next time something comes up, try it that way versus your typical default way. If your
Mm.
default way hasn't been working, if it's been working for you, God bless. Do what you're doing already. But if you're looking for another way to resolve what you've been going through your whole life, you need some protocols, some tools in place for when things happen. You feel like you kind of jump off the deep end every time.
Yeah.
You gotta try a different way. You gotta see things in a different light.
Mm. How has faith? Looking at this picture again. I would sort of faith in
Yeah,
as another building block. How has that contributed to your where you are?
in an amazing way, man. I mean, that's why I'm here. To be honest
Mm.
with you, when I say here, I mean still alive. It's my faith, it's my belief in tomorrow being better than yesterday, and faith is everything for me. I mean, because what I've had to tell people so often is like my faith is not a hope. It's beyond hope. Faith to me is just
Mm.
way beyond hope. Like hope is still some uncertainty. Like I hope it happens. It's like you're not sure that's going to happen. With me, faith is all about expectancy. I expect stuff to happen. The moment I commit toward doing something, it's already happened to me. And I mean it too. This is not some metaphysical stuff. It's already for me. If
Yeah.
I'm going to work toward anything, it's mine. In my opinion, I feel like I deserve it. So I'm going to work extra hard towards something I know I deserve. I mean, that's it's mine. And it's just some things that I do before I really get to work on things. Some things I wrote about in the book
Mm.
that helps me to get to work that hard. Before I even pursue anything, because I know, oh, I deserve it because of some things that I've done beforehand. I make sure I feel it first. The moment I start to feel it, I'm like, oh, it's mine. Let's do this, and I expect it. So
Yeah.
faith for me, man, it's taken me so far because it helps me to feel the things that I want before I even pursue them.
So specifically, you say faith, Jesus,
Jesus.
Christianity, biblical
Yep.
truths. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
It's that's my favorite book. I love books, but that's my favorite one, man. I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you. Yep.
Yeah. No. It's yeah. Many would agree. Some
Yep.
disagree. Many disagree as well. But
Of course. Exactly. Exactly.
um, well, you all getting talking about books. You're. I read somewhere you obviously you're super well read. You fell in love with reading years and years ago.
Yeah.
Was it like four? What did I read? A book a week or something? With that, is that did I remember that right?
Well, okay. So at one point, when I began to just really change my mindset,
Yeah.
this is back in maybe 2015, 2014 or so. Going through different things, I began reading 9 books every 3 weeks, and just
Oh.
to really, seek out answers and knowledge. And I was going through just transitioning, from being a pro athlete just to get acclimated in the
Yeah.
quote unquote regular world. Um, was going through depression and potential divorce and being a single father periodically because it's like we're together or not together, together. It was just it was difficult. But more recently, I gave myself a challenge. This is during the pandemic because I had so much time on my hands out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Gave myself a challenge of reading 30 books in 30 weeks, and I pulled off reading 31 books in 29 weeks. And it
Typical
was
overachiever.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, right, exactly.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was my. I said, you know what, man, I already got 30. Let me read one more. I still had like about a week, like 2 weeks left. When I remember, I'm like, okay, let me read another one just to see if I can pull off even more in less time. And
Yeah.
it was an amazing goal, transformative for sure. I felt different afterward, man. It was man, I felt different. I was a whole nother person after those 30 weeks. I was a different beast, man. I just felt like I grew. I just felt like I
Yeah.
grew. There's so many. I felt like every author became a mentor for me. They just were teaching me. Every book was like, "Hey Joel, here's how you do this." Boom. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
gained 40 years of knowledge from somebody. Then another 40 years. Then another. I got thousands of years of knowledge after 30 weeks from reading these books. It was amazing.
What would you say? Like maybe the top three most life changing. Got to be some memorable.
Well, I mean, this book wasn't from this challenge, but this I read this back in that 2014 time period. As a Man Thinketh. That's by James Allen. It was written in 1903. No
What's it?
fluff.
What's the title?
As a Man Thinketh. So it's
As a
like,
man thinketh. Oh, got
yeah,
it.
As a
Okay.
Man Thinketh. And amazing book. It's a short but sweet book. I'm talking. This was maybe one of the shortest books I've ever read. But hands down, outside of the Bible, one of the most impactful books I've ever read. It's about, depending on the edition, it's 60 to 90 pages. It's short and sweet, but the fact that there's no fluff whatsoever, no go to my website, no visit me here, no follow me there. It was straight to the point, convicting words that made you feel less than in a positive way. Like, man, I need to be doing more. You're
Like
right.
you knew
I
you had
can be
more
doing
in
more.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I read that book and I felt guilty. And by
Yeah.
when I read it,
Yeah.
I achieved quite a bit. I was already a pro athlete, but I felt like I'm definitely not doing all that I could do. And that's what I
Yeah.
needed to feel.
Yeah.
And so the As a Man Thinketh is hands down one of my favorite books. Another one that I was a part of that 30-week challenge was ABCs to Success by Bob Proctor. No question, an amazing book. That just really simplified success, to be honest, which is something I'm also always seeking out. There was a business book that I read that was great. I believe it was the four. It's probably right behind me, but I think the 4 executive rules for a CEO or something like that, and it gave some hypothetical scenarios in there. It was a great business read for me.
Yeah.
But those are some great ones.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. No, that quote,
yeah,
as a man thinketh, how you summarize that. I don't know if you follow Jordan Peterson or any of those guys,
yeah.
but he has a meme that goes around. It just says, just picture of him, and it says, you're not everything you could be, and you know it.
Yep.
And that's all it says.
Love that.
And man, I just hear that all the time. Like, gosh, you were
Love
so
it.
right. The time we waste doing X, Y, and Z, and
Yep.
whatever. Some folks are just they're very content. But if you're one of those people like you or like me that just wants to always improve on everything, and
Exactly.
it's just a non. You could look at your every day and say, how did I spend that why did I spend 20 minutes looking at YouTube?
Wow.
Like I didn't
Exactly.
even. It was not, you need that in your day to just kind of decompress here and there, but you add it
Mhm.
all up and you're like, the time
Right.
gets away
I
from you.
wasted,
So,
some precious time. Right. And
yeah,
I'm the same
yeah,
way. I have to catch myself. Like, oh, okay, no, stay on the ball, get on the ball,
yeah,
and that's what it's about, man. That
yeah,
growth.
yeah, 100%, 100%. How old's your son now?
He's 9,
9. Okay.
9 years
Yeah, I have a
old. Yeah.
9-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. So,
Oh, that's awesome, man.
yeah. So, I mean, how do you shape that into your, into your day? Obviously, you hustling, sometimes you got to balance that, right? You got to,
Absolutely.
so how do you find that balance? Because when I said, like, what you do in a day, playing with your, rolling around with your son on the floor is
Right.
not wasted time, right? Sometimes
No.
I used to think about that, like, oh, I could be doing this,
Yeah.
that. Like, wait a minute, you're not wasting time here.
At
This is
all.
your
At
boy.
all.
This.
Yeah.
So how does that balance go for you?
I mean, it's funny because I've had similar thought before, when he was younger. And I'm like,
Yeah,
again, I had the same revelation. That's the most beautiful time you could be
yeah,
spending. And I'm aware that all fathers aren't around,
yeah,
for their kids. So I'm so intentional about spending time with him, about communicating with him. That's our best connection is our
yeah, man.
communication. Like literally just we know one another, and that's a great thing. I was at his back to school night last night,
Mm.
and he wasn't allowed to be there, so he was with his mom. I went to the back to school
Yeah,
night,
yeah.
and apparently the teacher had the kids fill out a how well do you know me
Oh yeah, yeah. We
little
just did
script.
that ourselves. Yeah, yeah. We didn't do so well. I'm not gonna lie to you.
That's
We,
that's funny. That's funny. Look, I'm gonna tell you, that my son
awesome.
he's the same way on Austin Powers when you had Mini Me and Doctor Evil.
Yeah, yeah,
Look,
yeah, yeah.
my son is Mini Me. Like everybody knows him. No, he's into the same '80s flicks. He loves '80s movies. He loves kung fu flicks. He's a
Oh,
whole Mini
nice.
Me. So I filled out the thing on the blank side, and then we were able to turn it over and see what our kids put. I think it was like 8 answers. I think I had 7 out of the exact same.
Yeah, we had
It
one of
was
you parents
amazing.
in our school too. Thank you.
And, it's I mean, that's the fun stuff, man. It was really
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
just to do something like that, and my son, man, it's not hard to balance at this point because I put that in the forefront.
mm,
I make sure like, hey, we're going to do this together. We're going to do that together. And fortunately, he loves basketball. And the
yeah,
reason why I
yeah,
say fortunate is because it's a strong shared interest to where
yeah,
I'm in the gym. He doesn't mind coming to the gym.
yeah, yeah.
So it's like we could spend time together, just being in the gym. And
Right.
so that for me, it's a healthy balance to where we sit, watch movies, we draw together.
Yeah,
He's a creative
yeah.
kid. It works out.
And even when you're, this is another thing I sort of realized, sometimes when I'm working or I'm like, I got to do this, I got to do that, and they see me quote unquote hustling, you
Yeah,
know, it's also something they're observing. They're downloading that. I'm like, oh,
absolutely.
dad's doing this. Dad's my role model. Oh, maybe that's what I should. And I think subconsciously they're getting programmed in a sense to like, maybe that's the best way to approach life. So
Right,
even
right.
if you're not directly with them, your actions, your hustle, your drive is something that's a positive thing too, right? They're not going to,
No question. I
that's
mean,
not going to just fall by the wayside. That's, yeah.
and I can tell already that he picks that up.
Mm,
And it may not be directly because I'll hear something that he's talked about to
mm,
somebody else, and I'm like, oh, he noticed that. Okay.
mm.
Like my coaches at our camps. I have my Nike camps every summer, and one of my coaches will come tell me what my son has told them about something about me. I'm like, okay, so he actually, again, like you say, he's taking note.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm big on his mindset being in the right place. Like before school, every morning we go over a quote. we have quote cards that I created, and I'm like, let's go over these. You have to read
Yeah.
it so we can work on reading and comprehension. So I'm like, all right, let's read this quote. Tell me about it. Tell me what you think about it. And it may be a Bruce Lee quote. It may be one of my quotes. It may be whatever. But
Yeah.
he has to read it and tell me what he thinks about it. And he's a whole young philosopher at this point. So it's like
Nice. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
it's a really cool thing just to know, like, okay, I want to at least be comfortable knowing that he can comprehend a situation. He can think properly about a situation. So these quotes has kind of been pretty cool to do.
Yeah, man. That's you're putting on a clinic as far as being a dad. But I think, I mean, but again, going back to your childhood, what are some things? It sounds like your dad and your mom were good parents. I don't know. Maybe they just seemed like they were there for you. They were present.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. But I guess other things in your childhood, like what are things that maybe you had seen or you experienced, you felt that you're like thinking consciously, I don't want to let my son see this or feel this or there's a bunch of stuff you want to always learn and take good from your parents in your neighborhood and your upbringing, and take the good and trim out the bad. You know what I mean? What are some of those things that you think of all the time? Is there a couple of big ones?
Yeah, I mean, neighborhood was a big one. So that was just, I knew how difficult that was on me as a child. And it wasn't even, again, that I noticed every difficulty, but in hindsight, I'm like, man, that happened because of the environment I was in. That happened because of the neighborhood I was in. Me getting in fights on the block was because the block that I lived on, or just that environment of desperation that existed. And, everyone just trying to get out, that crabs in the barrel mentality, things happening, people stealing from each other because people are without. That drove me to say, I cannot have that happen, or have my son be in that environment to where he's feel like, okay, he has to take from somebody else because he doesn't have. So I'm going to work that much harder to make sure he at least has the necessities, to make sure he's good there. Another thing for me, I'll be honest, was bullying. I wasn't bullied a lot, but I was bullied, at different moments to where I'm like, I can't have that happen for him. So I'm going to just make sure he's at least confident in himself as a kid, as a child. He can, handle himself in a different situation. We talk about this stuff, hey, we have a boxing bag, heavy bag, things like, just so he can feel confident in himself if confronted with anything. I don't endorse fighting, and he knows that about me. Like, look, I don't want you looking for any fights, whatsoever. But I don't want him to not feel confident if that ever happens. So it's just things that I experienced growing up to where I'm like, I can't have him be unprepared for these different parts of life that are just true parts of life. Like bullying happens, stealing happens, all these things. I just, it's
like don't start shit, but if shit comes at you, you want to be ready. Because that's the world. That's the world. Yeah, absolutely.
My father told me that. It's actually put it in my book when I was about 5 years old. I remember sitting on the side of the bed, and he told me, he said, look, if you ever feel threatened, he said, hit first. He said, he trusted me already, even at that age. He said, if you feel threatened, he said, if someone hits you, this is exactly what he told me. That's what I wrote about. He said, if you ever get hit back harder. That was his words to me. If you ever get hit back harder. And I never forgot it.
It's like life lesson too, right? Life's going to hit you nonstop, but you hit life back. It just transcends, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I'll never forget it, man. And you're right. Spot on with that. That's a life lesson.
But it's too bad too. I'm picturing you and your family growing up, similar to mine, but a little bit different, and folks all around the world, really. But even in this country, it gets a little political. But it's like, to take your son out of that, it takes, economics has a lot to do with it, right? Your parents, I wish, I don't know I don't know them, I want to put words, but I would imagine if they had different means, you would have lived in a different part of the country. I mean, absolutely. I would imagine, right?
Absolutely.
But it's just, what are they going to do? Pastors last time I checked, they're not pulling in 7-figure, well, there's a few out there, but there's a few out there.
Joe Osteen.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But yeah, it's unfortunate that that's just a reality. But folks like you are proving, okay, well, guess what? I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to, yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough, but
It's
your
a tough
story is
situation, man.
certainly inspiring. Well, so
Yeah, I
when
appreciate that.
do you do inspirational speaking? And I've seen a lot of your stuff, and do you do a lot of that as well?
Yes, that's a passion of mine. That's
Oh, yeah, okay.
me just helping to instill into others, man, is my purpose. That's
Mm,
I've recognized it, whether it be by sport. Again, I'm a national director for Nike sports camps as well, so I put on sports camps for the youth around the country every year, and that's just it's the same purpose, the same intent. Whether I'm speaking from a
yeah,
stage to a company, to an organization, or to a school, it's all the same to me. I'm helping to instill, a certain mindset and mentality into people that I'm talking to and teaching in different moments, and I love it, man. I
yeah.
love it so much because I know it's an immediate impact, whether they realize it or not.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's not immediate from their end totally because they don't have a chance to fully apply it just yet.
Yeah.
But the part that is immediate is it can immediately change their perspective. And
Hmm.
that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people carry a solid perspective. There's no one perfect perspective. But if I can help instill a good one in people, then I've done my job. If I can help instill into a youth athlete that one more mentality, like give my all mentality, I've done my job.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you get folks coming up to you? I mean, I imagine you got your finger on the pulse of a lot of, say, young men, maybe some young women as well, coming up to you and saying, "Oh, I can't, I can't make it because of this, or I'm struggling because of this." Is there a common theme that you hear coming at you where you're like,
Absolutely.
"No, listen,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of especially when it comes to the youth, a lot of them will come to me and talk about family. You
mm,
know, my mom is always on me for this, or my dad, or whatever, or my dad isn't even around, so that's
mm,
why I'm into this or that. And so that's the common themes, man. It usually dates back to the family, and I then tell almost each of them, honestly, again, as I mentioned to you, to use that as fuel and to realize the power that you have to change things in the
mm,
direction that you want them to go.
yeah,
But think about it. That's one thing that we don't often do. We don't think about where we want to go and truly give it thought. Like we may dream about some things and let them be passing thoughts, but how often do we sit and say, here's where I want to go, and write that
mm,
stuff down and actually start to devise plans for it. And that's why I
yeah,
try to teach teenagers now, like, look, where do you want to go? Okay, so what are some things that can actually get you there? All right, now let's think about this and that happening along the way. What could stop you from, potentially getting there? Let's write down those little hiccups so we can
yeah,
have some protocol in place for those potential hiccups so that when they may arise, they don't stop you. And
mm-hmm,
these are things that I've taken teenagers through just to give them a vision, a realistic vision of letting them know, look, you can work as hard as you want towards a certain objective, but it's not going to be a perfect route. So
yeah, yeah,
just have some things ready in place that will still allow you to overcome that imperfect route and get you to that end result. But yeah, I mean, I'm just really trying to give people, that level of faith to where again they expect for their lives to turn around for the better.
yeah. Well, it sounds cliche, but you're spot on. If I mean, there's almost nothing you can't accomplish if again, we live in a free country,
Yep.
and you can just because some countries aren't like that. That's I
Right.
always bring that up because people forget how amazing and how blessed we are to live here,
So
right?
true.
You can the government for the most part stays out of your way. But it's really amazing if you really do decide to do something and laser focus on it, and every thought in your mind is how do I get to what that goal is. It's very very unlikely that it won't happen. You know what I mean?
Right. I,
It's
I,
so
I agree.
it's so
I
damn
agree.
true. I mean,
It's it's
sometimes
it's,
yeah,
it's cause and effect. To be honest, it's just like if it's hard to again it's hard to not happen if that's where you're putting your energy, your focus, your
yeah,
attention. It's hard to not bring something about within that area of focus. It's difficult.
yeah,
It's difficult, but we dabble a lot, and that's where we lack. We're like, oh, you almost gave it full attention, but you didn't. That's why you didn't have that result that you wanted.
mm,
If you just
mm,
stay with it a little bit longer, if you were disciplined just a little bit longer,
yeah,
you were right there. You were right there, and we start dabbling with all these different things instead of going all in
mm,
on that one thing. And again, I have a number of different industries. You know, I do a number of things, but I tell people all the time, I do one thing at a time. I only do one thing at a time. Like
Yeah.
I'm national director for Nike Sports. I'm a motivational speaker. I do all that, but I only do one thing at a time. And when I do it, I do it. Like when I work on it, I'll work on it, and that's the only thing that exists to me, and that helps me out because it gives me fulfillment knowing I'm giving this thing during this time my all,
Yeah.
and that's all I can be happy about. Like I'm cool with that.
Yeah, that is the other balance I've struggled with too. I'm very interested in a lot of things. I'm extremely interested in a lot of things. Right, this podcast is a passion project. Though it's not my day job. It's just something I enjoy doing. And I'm a musician. I play drums. But my day job is I'm a computer engineer by trade. So right,
Nice.
I can go on and on. I love a lot of different things, but
Yeah.
and then we say if you want to really be successful, you have to focus on one thing. But I think there's a nuance to it, and you just articulated it. One thing at a time.
At a time, right?
Right. So if you're shifting your day between X, Y, and Z, you're probably not going to move the needle too much. But if you can
Right.
focus on X, all right,
Yeah.
get that to a certain point, then focus on Y.
Yeah.
You can have a little bit of multidiscipline about you without sacrificing the focus.
And that's what I've told people before. I've spoken to different entrepreneurs at different expos, and all. I'm like, look, you don't have to do everything every day either. You can literally segment your schedule throughout the week and say, okay, on Mondays and Wednesdays, this is my focus. I'm going to dedicate my full time toward these objectives. On Tuesday and Thursday, here's what I'm working on. It can be that second interest that you have. On Saturdays and Sundays or whatever the case is, here's your focus, or you just give your mind a break. But you can segment things to where you're still giving them an amazing amount of attention, and you don't feel like you're cheating one for the other because you're giving them laser-like focus. It just takes, honestly, a lot of us, again, I'm guilty of it too. It takes that one day of just organizing the thing that you want to work toward. We just don't take that time to organize the many things that we want to have structured in our lives. And we feel overwhelmed because we haven't taken that moment to just organize everything and orchestrate everything. We give ourselves that one day to organize and orchestrate everything. After that day, we feel more comfortable pursuing this, and that.
Yeah. And it's less stressful, it's less anxiety provoking, right? Stress. It's like cognitive behavioral therapy is all about that, isn't it? Like get that on paper.
Exactly.
And just and you'll be a lot less. Yeah.
Get it out. It's that's one thing. Man, seriously, I thank God that I've adopted because I'm one that can retain a lot in my mind and try to go ahead and attack it all. But after a while, some things will get jumbled because I'm so interested, just like you, in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I'm one to where I'm doing something and all of a sudden I see this other attractive thing over here. I'm like, let me try that real quick. And it's like, no, stay focused. But the fact that I have begun putting things down on paper and just really laying things out for myself has helped me so much.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah. Well, Joel, where can people find you?
You can. I'm on social media, for sure. Instagram, Jay Green PLT. That's Jay Green PLT. I love engagement. That's the thing with me. It's whether it be on a post or even a DM. I will have a full conversation with somebody. If I can help. In any regard. If somebody, even of late, been reaching out about my book, I love this excerpt. They'll send me an excerpt highlighted from my book, and I'm like, I love that, and I'll just give them a breakdown of what I meant, in detail, things like that. But on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, Joel Green Official on there, and my website, joelbgreen.com, and you can find my book on Amazon now, Filtering, by Joel Green. So.
Yeah, man. I'll put all those links in the show notes so folks have them. But well, Joel, I love your story, man. I really do. It's inspiring. There's a lot of inspiring people out there, but you're certainly one of them. And I just love the come from behind story. It's always a feel good story, but just to talk to someone in detail about their journey has been amazing.
Much respect to you too, man. Yeah. For yours, seriously. I appreciate you letting me know about yours. That's
absolutely. Yeah. All right, brother. I'll let you go. I appreciate your time, and I'll let you know when this publishes, and we'll go from there. But
awesome.
Be well, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Absolutely.